Good afternoon, everyone. Hi, welcome to a deep dive into Telus Ocean. This is part of our Ideas and Impact series hosted by South Island Prosperity Partnership. And we explore ideas that have the potential to change our region, our province, our country, and the world. I'm Kerry Slavens. I'm the Director of Engagement at South Island Prosperity Partnership, and I'll be your moderator today. Today, we're going to take a deep dive into a landmark development project for our region's commercial core, which proponents say could shape Greater Victoria's innovation ecosystem for decades to come. Telus Ocean is proposed as a $100 million new business and innovation center at 767 Douglas that will significantly contribute to Greater Victoria's economic strength. When built, Telus Ocean is set to become the regional head for TELUS, Western Canada's largest employer, creating space for about 250 of the company's employees in the region's downtown core. And the center will also act as a hub for innovation-based businesses for other companies and their employees. And we're looking at, during construction, job creation of about 500 local living wage jobs for skilled laborers and tradespeople. And now I want to introduce our panelists for today. Luke Murray is principal from ARYZE, and ARYZE is the community development partner with TELUS and the collaborator on this. And then we have Scott Dutchak. He's vice president of corporate real estate, environment and sustainability at TELUS. And Emilie Rosenroll is CEO of South Island Prosperity Partnership, the region's economic development alliance. So I just want to let everybody know we're going to have a Q&A session following the panel for the last 20 minutes or so. And during the panel, you can put your questions in chat, just type them into chat, and we'll get the panel to answer as many as possible. So welcome, everybody. Hi.
Hi.
So Telus Ocean looks like a truly remarkable project, and we're celebrating and welcoming to the region. My first question is for all of you. What elements of the project are you most excited about? Maybe, Scott, I'll start with you.
Sure. Thanks, Kerry. Good afternoon, everyone. It's a pleasure to speak to you today. That's a really tough question because I know we only have an hour to talk about things, Kerry. But there's a number of things that I'd like to highlight with the building that really I think is not only exciting for me, but also, people who've been involved with the project. The first one really is the ground floor lobby. I think what you'll see with TELUS Ocean is a non-traditional office lobby. For those of you who have been to TELUS Garden in Vancouver, for example, you'll certainly have experienced that type of activated living room of the city kind of feel to it. So the lobby will be porous, it'll be transparent, it'll be pedestrian friendly. We also are installing the largest ultra high definition digital screen, I think in BC, in this lobby. So on that screen, some of the really cool things that we'd like to do is really tie into the TELUS Ocean theme, produce artwork, updates of ocean themed science, for example, that we're collaborating with UVic on. So really exciting stuff with the lobby. Additionally, the rooftop, because you can appreciate this building, the views are going to be amazing from this rooftop. We're going to open up our rooftop amenities for the use of the community, for our customers, for our team members. So we're really excited about introducing this new meeting room space on the roof of TELUS Ocean. The sustainability, Kerry, the sustainability of this, we have 4 certifications that we're going to achieve with it. LEED, it's going to be well ready, salmon safe certified, and zero carbon. This will be the most sustainable building when it's completed in British Columbia. And then finally, the high level of connectivity. You can appreciate being a company like TELUS. We have some really ambitious plans for the fastest communication infrastructure in an office building in Victoria. So we're really excited about all those elements, Kerry.
Wow, that sounds exciting. And that screen sounds amazing. Luke, same question for you. What elements of the project are you most excited about?
Yeah, good question. I can't turn my urban planner brain off. So the first thing is, when I look at the history of Victoria over the last 60 years, around 90% of all of our housing growth has gone to post-industrial, industrial, or commercial lands, which is just, there's another name for that, employment lands. So what's really important about this project is the investment of new innovation and employment investment in our downtown core, which adds kind of economic resiliency to our region. In addition to that is the public realm is a huge part of it. Victoria is a beautiful city. It's a harbor city, but we have an Achilles heel, and that is programmed public spaces. And we've been extremely ambitious with this project on kind of extending the blast radius of improvement to the ground floor of the streets and plazas around the project. So, what we've designed, I think, might be, the nicest public spaces in Victoria. And that's a real kind of pay it forward that this project brings.
Wow, that's great. And that's kind of also, I mean, that's right in the heart of the business and tourist district. Am I right?
Yeah, that's correct. And one of the intentions, I think, with the ambitious public realm design was to how do you bend that tourism curve to include Douglas and not just Government Street, to kind of foster more opportunities for cafes and other businesses around the area. And that, once again, it's that principle of extending the benefits and stretching the benefits of this investment to surrounding areas.
Okay, that's great. And Emilie, you're looking through an economic development lens, but also somebody who lives here. What is exciting you about this project?
Yeah, Kerry, I'm glad you said as someone who lives here too, because it's hard to separate, my excitement as a resident of the South Island. I think, first of all, I come from with an economic development background, but also an urban planning, or not planning, but an urban space history background as well. And so combining those, I think that there are just tremendous benefits that the region will really experience with an investment like this. I think it's making visible what is already a major part of our economy, the innovative part of our economy. Technology sector is the largest sector in Greater Victoria, and it's still relatively invisible, and certainly invisible to let's say a tourist who's downtown looking around at some of the beautiful sites to see in Greater Victoria. So I think it's very exciting to be able to have an iconic structure such as this in our downtown area, which of course we know is highly photographed and sort of the best postcard you could have from an economic development standpoint to be exported across the country and world.
That's great to know. And Scott, let's go into the whys now. Why is TELUS investing in this really innovative project, and why here in BC's capital?
Yeah, great question. So TELUS has a legacy of constructing and developing pretty iconic office buildings. If you think of TELUS Garden in Vancouver, TELUS Sky in Calgary, just recently completed. TELUS Ocean is going to be a continuation of that legacy. And I really think, it stems from a belief, a corporate belief in the power of real estate to affect communities positively. And so this really is a manifestation of that belief, including our philosophy on use. Like I mentioned, the rooftop amenities and so forth, it's really open to team members, customers, the community. It's really a shared space, if you will, if you want to think about it that way. So it's in line with our legacy, with our core beliefs as an organization. In terms of why Victoria specifically, well, Emilie just mentioned it. There's burgeoning and active tech community, this talent. We want to really be a part of that. TELUS has, as you know, invested heavily in tech over the last number of years, and we want to be part of that in a way that this innovation economy exists. It's collaborative, resilient, accessible, fun, exciting, sustainable. And we really believe that this building and our commitment to opening up those opportunities within this building will lead to that. So that's in a nutshell why we're investing.
Yeah, no, that's fabulous. And just as an aside, and please correct me if I'm wrong, but doesn't TELUS have a bit of a history here dating back to BC Tel? I think one of your staff told me that. So there's a bit of a legacy here.
Absolutely. And, being, coming from BC Tel, we really haven't had the profile in terms of a built form in Victoria that I think is due to our history and our deep roots in Victoria. We believe Ocean is going to correct that situation.
That's great. Luke, what about this project attracted ARYZE to it? I mean, ARYZE is arguably one of BC's most progressive and quickly emerging developers of typically medium density housing. So why a commercial office project like this?
Yeah, it is not within our typical wheelhouse. We on the outward face, we probably look like we're working on a whole bunch of random things on the island, but there is a methodology to it, and that is we're huge fans of Victoria. And so when we heard about this program and early discussions with TELUS, the key thing we knew that TELUS didn't mess around with the quality of their projects. And that they would be their city building initiatives. And that's what we really do consider ourselves to be. Like, we're entrepreneurs, but we're also just heavily invested in building a better Victoria. So that was the draw, was to be a part of a project that we knew would be a catalyst for a new, better Victoria.
Okay, that's great. And so let's move for a minute now to the bird's eye view of the project and what it means for the region. So Emilie, from the perspective of the South Island Prosperity Partnership, which, as I've said, is the region's economic alliance, what does this mean to the region's innovation ecosystem and economy overall?
Thanks for the question, Kerry. I think it's one of those, there's massive and intangible impacts that are hard to quantify and really imagine, because it's a tremendous signal to investors, both locally in Canada and the rest of the world, when they've seen investments such as this. An amazing amount of investor confidence, confidence on behalf of the largest employer in Western Canada, TELUS, of course, and so I think that it's hard to quantify how symbolic a visible investment like this really is. I think it also ties to the ocean story, and of course, as many of us know, ocean technology and innovation is becoming a very important part of our regional economy, and SIP, as well as the Association of BC Marine Industries, Ocean Networks Canada, and many other partners are all really combining forces right now to build something called the Center of Ocean Applied Sustainable Technologies. So this ties very much to that cluster, what we call a cluster, that we think is an important regional area. Of course, we're surrounded on all sides by water. It's a critical part of our economy to really develop.
That's great. And Emilie, I have another question, a follow-up, but just before I ask that, can you just play with your sound a little bit and try and turn it out? We're just getting some interference a little bit. Okay, let's try this. So there's a term, tentpole, and it's often used to describe these types of major investments from future forward companies like TELUS. Could this project serve as a tentpole for our region? And if so, what does that mean for our future, Emilie?
Yeah, I think that the word tentpole typically signals that a major investment or project is one that leads to many other projects and investments and so on. And so, as I mentioned in my comments before, this is one of those sort of turning points where we can really start having a sort of a massive reputational boost in terms of some of these, especially, we're talking about jobs that are over the living wage. They're based on innovation. They're usually clean, frequently sort of digital, what we call digital jobs. So these are jobs that are very desirable in a knowledge economy. And so certainly this is a moment where we can really leverage that as a tentpole investment, and be able to create the next generation of sustainable jobs in Greater Victoria.
That's great. And one thing we should mention is a lot of people are hearing about the Coast Innovation Hub, and then there's Telus Ocean, and the two are not directly connected, but they are part of this whole growth of innovation, our innovation culture happening in Victoria, which is really interesting. Can I call them a wave? It's really bad. Anyway, so question, as TELUS's regional head office, TELUS Ocean is going to bring about 250 employees into the region's downtown, plus employees from other businesses that will lease the space from TELUS. And during the pandemic, we saw an almost immediate shift to remote working. So for many of the region's employees, the downtown core was the center of their work, and then they went home. So let's talk about the role of office environments going forward. What needs to happen to ensure our office workers can safely return to work, and what impact will these have on dense commercial centers like our downtown area? Luke, I'll put that question to you first.
Yeah, this is a question being asked by a lot of people, and so I'll shed my opinion on the matter, and I think you look at companies like Dropbox, they're going to a touch-in only remote work environment. But then you look at like Google, Apple, Microsoft, they're all sticking to corporate campus office projects with the introduction of more flexibility. So I personally don't think the office is going anywhere. I think if anything, what the pandemic has kind of taught us is two things: that working remote is an option and should be integrated into our kind of daily or our weekly routines. But the second thing is that the office is actually undervalued, in that it's not that it's perfect in what it is, but what we've realized is what it can be in terms of future thinking kind of innovation spaces, rather than are you a warm body in a seat, aka you're there. Like that's the kind of the cubicle of the past. So I think the change that we're going to see in the office environment, they're going to be mostly cultural, not physical. And in the long run, humans are an incredibly resilient social species, and we forget things really quickly. So once we're all kind of vaccinated, I think the world's going to return back to normal fairly quickly. But the cultural shift and the flexibility shift and this kind of work-life balance is really going to be kind of what drives our utilization of office space in the future.
Okay, that's really interesting. Scott, what has TELUS learned about this with your workforce?
Yeah, it's actually a question, Kerry, that we get asked quite a lot. Prior to COVID-19 and the pandemic, we've always had a program called Work Styles, which allows our team members to work, remotely and come into the office a certain number of days a week. Once COVID-19 hit, we closed our offices, and we had 95% of our 26,000 team members working from home. So we got out pretty early, and I mean, we did have a bit of a head start, but when we think about our offices in the future, it's like Luke said, it's a culture change, but it's also physical change. So our team members will be coming into our offices, again, not for heads down, I'm at my workstation, I'm working away. They're coming in for a purpose. And those purposes will be collaboration, brainstorming, coaching, socialization, or specialized work, all those things that you need that physical space for. So we are rethinking our physical layout. We are getting rid of offices. We are getting rid of workstations, and we're deliberately designing spaces to facilitate large collaboration, not within just the four walls of a room, but across countries. So again, people will be coming in with a purpose, maybe not every day, but we're really excited about what I think there's going to be a cultural shift in terms of that office approach going forward. Our team members love it. Our productivity remains extremely high. So we think that it's a boon to team engagement. The challenge is, of course, having the leadership and the management and the technology infrastructure to support a remote work, but also a healthy office environment that is focused on coming in with a purpose.
Wow. Well, Emilie, now SIP convened at the beginning of the pandemic the Rising Economy Task Force, and what came out of that was Greater Victoria's Economic Recovery Plan. And that also looked at workspaces, how people are working, and emphasized and talked about the need to support local businesses, because obviously when employees went home, local businesses suffered. And the need for safe and vibrant urban spaces too. Can you talk a little bit more about that and what the committee's discovered?
Yeah, absolutely. There were a lot of recommendations really centered around the livability and the vibrancy of the Main Street businesses, and that's downtown, and that's everywhere around the region. Very important thing that we saw how much of our social existence really is centered around the streetscape, and how much of our economy is really sort of behind this bricks and mortar bricks and mortar kind of business thing. And so how do we really think about revitalizing that and reigniting that after as we move through the end of this the shutdown period? And we know restrictions are probably going to begin to ease, which is very exciting news. So definitely there are losses that can't be regained. That was identified as, really just, you can't even begin to sort of talk about how hard the impact has been on a lot of these smaller businesses. So I think that going forward, it's impossible to think that we're going to all transition to e-commerce businesses. That's just not really in the cards. Of course, there's restaurant tourism businesses that just don't operate on that kind of business model. So a project like this building that we're talking about, of course, brings direct jobs, the TELUS employees, 250 of them, but also other workers too who will be in and out of that building, smaller companies. TELUS has begun to sort of speak about some of their plans around the innovation hub side of this. That obviously has an ecosystem component to it. So that's not even beginning to mention those indirect and induced jobs, which are, of course, eating at restaurants or buying cards downtown over lunchtime or running some errands downtown. And of course, the people that work in those buildings, they live elsewhere. They don't usually live downtown. So it really has a regional impact that is of huge significance.
Okay, that's really fascinating because, of course, sorry.
Well, sorry, Kerry, just on that note, one thing that I think is really important to kind of bolster some things Emilie just said was local kind of retail in terms of small business, local retail, to support 10 square feet of local retail, you can either have 100 square feet of office or 600 square feet of residential. So it really speaks to just how much impact there is in retail economics of office space, providing resiliency for downtown businesses. So it's like these kind of investments just have such a broader impact on the city when we think about kind of like this whole principle of kind of economic recovery. So sorry to cut you off there.
No, absolutely. Just a conversation. So please, anybody who wants to, any of you want to jump in. There is
one more time. Sorry. And just on that note, just back to what Luke was saying, the other thing that we don't think about a lot is that local business, actually, there's studies on how much dollars are recirculated in the local economy more, than organizations that come from outside the region. So the benefit is, again, trickles through the local economy much better and captures more of those dollars locally than a lot of other types of investments.
Okay, no, that's great. There is an area of this project that has been a little bit contentious, given its potential impact. Could the project be delayed due to potential design elements not aligning with the status quo? We don't know, but there has been some contention around that. A recent Globe and Mail article talked about how many municipalities across Canada need to shift their cultures to more of a yes in my backyard rather than a not in my backyard approach. So what needs to happen? I'll start with Luke to move this project into the yes category. How do you build the support?
Yeah, so that is, it comes down to a principle of kind of, making room in a city. A city's never done. It's kind of part of the definition of what a city is. And so, supporting this project, we have a portal through our website where you can fill out support forms for the project. But it's, what you're really highlighting is a bit of an inflection point in our city. And I'll try not to get too long of a rant going for you, but there's what some of the feedback is that the building is kind of incompatible with some of the heritage aspects of the surrounding area. But in our minds, the buildings are from two different eras. The Empress is a beautiful building in its complexity, in its ornamentality, but it does represent kind of the older resource-based economy. Telus Ocean is a building that's designed to kind of look forward and represents this new digital economy. And I think people will be surprised to learn that the digital economy in BC has a higher output financially than mining, oil and gas, forestry combined. So it really is kind of the future, of our province in terms of our workforce. But the city policies, that were drafted for this property in 2012 don't contemplate these nuances. They're much more kind of broad sweeping, and so they're not designed to handle the kind of the diversification of the economy that's taking place almost sometimes on a monthly basis. So so the policies kind of speak to deference to the Empress Hotel. And don't get me wrong, I love the Empress, but there's a larger narrative that is needed to take place for a city to really mature. And in addition to that, there's an entire generation that doesn't necessarily hold the same reverence for the building. It doesn't mean that it's disrespectful, but it's just that we need to be able to have enough diversity of architecture in the city of Victoria for every resident to craft their own narrative of what their future city looks like. And if we're kind of pushing people into boxes of styles of architecture as this is good, this is bad, it doesn't allow people it's kind of an exclusive approach to whether you're in or out of the club. And so Victoria needs to have this kind of broader reach of architecture. And the last point is it doesn't mean that older buildings aren't invaluable. They're beautiful. We need to respect them. But the past is the light that's meant to illuminate our path to the future. But we can't let this glow distract us on moving forward. We still need to progress. And so that's why investments like this and the style of architecture are actually bigger than just a building. They represent two eras. And so that's kind of, this is the lens in which we view this project through.
Okay, that's really interesting. Scott, what's your views on this?
Yeah, it's really to pick up on what Luke was saying, is that I think this building represents the Victoria of now and in the future. We're putting a pin in the architecture of the city. I live here as well, right? So I'd like to see, and I hope this building delivers on that bold, globally significant architecture. We really believe we achieve it with this design. I think the community suffers when land use planning discussions focus on building materials or colors of buildings, as opposed to more important considerations, perhaps like building setbacks, shadowing neighboring properties, or even community impact. And really, Telus Ocean, the design that we've proposed, I think represents the only logical configuration for an office building of this size on a triangular property. The challenge is developing a non-traditional side core triangular office tower, and also making it meaningful and making it impactful. And frankly, we're breaking a lot of rules doing this. Our floor plate efficiencies are very low compared to a traditional building. And this makes the building candidly expensive to construct and operate. But we believe that, with this trade-off in cost, we are actually contributing to that architectural vocabulary in Victoria and actually delivering something that, again, meets that intent of a globally significant and iconic building. So we're hopeful that the broader community can see this and support it, and, in support that kind of diversity of architecture throughout Victoria. We'd love to hear from people if they believe that to be the case. And again, if Luke mentioned it, we do have a webpage if people want to add their voices to it. It's www.telusocean.com. In there, you'll find a ton of resources and images of the building, and actually a form where you can express your support for that. So would love to encourage people who feel the same way to complete that page, Kerry. Thanks.
Okay, that's great. And Emilie, I'm going to ask you the same question. I know I didn't ask Luke and Scott this, but I know that you've traveled quite a bit throughout the world and seen a lot of other cities and a lot of iconic architecture. And what are your thoughts on I guess, where the design of this building and how it fits into the community, and economic development wise, does it play a role having great architecture?
Yeah, it's a good question. I mean, I think that we could get into a debate about like our sort of architectural taste, and I don't think that's really super productive. I definitely sympathize with the points of view that were already stated, that this is about having an inclusive approach to how the city unfolds, and who are the beneficiaries of the city and who are actually driving the city's growth and evolution. And growth doesn't have to be a scary word. Growth can be a really sustainable thing. It can be about making sure that, our children and our children's children have places to live and jobs to stay in, so that they could stay here in the long term. So I think that change is kind of an inevitable part of evolution and growth. And it's something that we can do very deliberately and mindfully, and carefully, without stopping it. So that's sort of my point of view. And you're right. I've lived in 15 places, and I was born in Victoria. Thrilled to be back here in Victoria. Certainly an exciting place to live, and a great place to raise a family. I think that there's cities all around the world that do a beautiful job at combining old and new. You see it, spend a lot of time in Europe. They embrace having that sort of eclecticism, that sort of embracing the old and the new, the different stories, the diversity. You see it really visibly in a sort of striking way. And you see it in cities across Canada as well. Ottawa has done a great job at really integrating some really interesting juxtapositions of buildings. So is Halifax. This isn't something that we're inventing for the first time here. I think that there's at least sort of a spirit of open-mindedness that we can bring to this. Yeah, that's probably all I have to say, Kerry.
Yeah, no, that's great. Actually, it's a really interesting discussion because, it brings in so much of what our city and our region is about, and I think it's good for us to have these discussions. I'm going to take a little bit of a turn here, and question for Scott. TELUS, I know, invests billions of dollars into digital infrastructure and new innovations like 5G. How do companies here in our region actually, if we're an innovation culture, how do they line themselves up to work with TELUS in terms of procurement and innovation partnerships?
Yeah, great question. We're excited to work with companies in the region, and there's a number of ways that we can do that. The first one is please reach out directly to me. I'm open to that as a member of a TELUS team. If there's any interest in the procurement and participation on the real estate side, that's my specialty. I can certainly do that. At the same time, other business opportunities, if it's not me, I can certainly direct it to the team. So I can leave my contact information after this presentation. As well, my colleague Marshall Birkin is also a member of SIP who attends a lot of these meetings, as well as on probably your contact page. So Marshall is another great resource for people to get in touch with TELUS. And then finally, I just say, stay tuned. We have some really exciting things to announce with our innovation hub that we're going to put in place here, and incubation lab. So just stay tuned for those. They're coming. We're hopefully getting through council soon, and that's going to unlock the floodgates of things. So there are 3 ways that potentially people listening to this call can reach us.
Okay, that's great. And, I'm sure there's a lot we haven't touched on here. Do any of you have any final thoughts before we move into Q&A? Luke, is there anything else you want to look at?
No, I'd love to hear from the participants. So yeah, I think moving to Q&A would be awesome.
Okay, Scott or Emilie, anything else before we move into Q&A? Okay, great. Well, we've got some great questions here. The first one, John is asking, what elements take this project beyond a real estate play, as important as that is for everyone, including the investor? I think you've addressed some of those, but let's look beyond the real estate play, so to speak.
Maybe I can handle that one first, Kerry. So I think a traditional real estate play, I did allude to some of the challenges with developing the site, but I think what sets it apart is the amount of amenity space and public space, publicly accessible space that will be in this building. I can't think of other developments that would dedicate so much open space, publicly accessible areas to the public. So for example, I did talk about the rooftop amenity. Like, we have 10,000 square feet according to our plans on that roof that we are opening up to community use as well. It's bookable, it's available, it's available for functions. We also have a stadium seat on the 2nd floor mezzanine overlooking the intersection there of that very dramatic peak. that can be used for new product launches, for technology rollouts, that sort of thing. And as Luke mentioned before, during the, some of the elements at the beginning of the discussion, our blast radius of public improvements goes beyond our property line. So look for enhanced landscaping, enhanced features, not only on our property, but on the small plaza to the south, adjacent to the Crystal Garden, and the corner in the intersection of Humboldt and Douglas. So we believe that we are going on beyond the traditional development of an office building and doing something that's a little bit more significant. So hopefully you would agree that those features are manifest of that.
Okay, that's interesting. Luke, do you want to take any of that on? Add to what's
no, I think Scott addressed like 98% of it. I think the other thing is just that, there's existing entitlements on this property for a 43-meter tall building. And so I think the road that TELUS has chosen is actually the harder road, but it's the community investment road. And so by opening up the process to to a rezoning, there's all sorts of additional asks that can kind of come out of that through the city process. And TELUS, I think, is exceeding them at every capacity. So I think that just by virtue of the fact that we're going through a rezoning application instead of building to existing rights really does show that that it is a legacy investment in our city.
right. Okay, Emilie, any thoughts about that question?
I think it was pretty covered during the earlier conversation about how how this will be a more impactful, much more impactful than just the real estate position. So I don't really think I have anything else to add right now.
It is fascinating, though, the way, some of the other projects we've seen, first the building goes in, then there's a coffee shop, then suddenly there's a flower shop, then there, and it is fascinating watching the economies build around these. We have a question here, I'm not sure who from. The tourist hub of this community is in central Saanich, according to this person, Bouchard Gardens. How will the region play into this investment? So this isn't just about Victoria, presumably. Are we looking at a regional benefit here?
Yeah, I think like we have very from the early outset, this was a South Island project. It happens to be in the downtown of Victoria, but I think the centralization of a job base actually benefits the entire region. Because I see a sub question as well is leading to transportation and GHGs, and when you have a fragmented economy, it's hard to plan infrastructure. So things like Butcher Gardens are a destination, but the form of that draw is not one that you can build a regional economy around. It's still very important to the region, but when you have a centralized job base and tourist base in the core of Victoria, and then you have these peripheral benefits, you can plan sustainable infrastructure networks to get to these spaces. Whereas the more fragmented you get, the harder it is to plan on a regional basis. So I think it's the regional lens that when we look through actually leads to coordinated services and planning that ultimately lead to this principle of the rising tide lifts all boats.
Okay. We have a question here from somebody who's in UVic engineering. Will there be opportunities for UVic co-op students, undergrads and grads to work at Telus Ocean? Somebody very entrepreneurial here. I don't know if you can answer that at this point, Scott, but.
Yeah, so one of the things that we're excited about is actually working a lot closer with UVic on a number of fronts. Definitely we're looking forward to engaging with UVic students, specifically in our sustainability side. So I'm not sure if that engineering student is from the sustainable engineering program or not, but absolutely, I think is the answer. And yeah, that's something that TELUS has traditionally encouraged, is that those co-op opportunities. We see, again, this location, this presence, this statement in Victoria as a rededication or affirmation of TELUS's commitment to the community. And certainly that would include UVic.
Okay. Here's a question from Murray. Buildings and transportation are the top contributors to GHGs. This project can be helpful or counterproductive depending on the developer's attention to these issues. Who'd like to take that one?
Perhaps I can take that one as well, Kerry. Yes, absolutely. TELUS is committed to be carbon neutral in the next number of years. We are consciously not building a building here to contribute to GHGs. As a matter of fact, what we're trying to do is actually mitigate that. There's a number of things that we're doing with this building specifically. I mentioned the 4 certifications, sustainability certifications: LEED, WELL, salmon safe, and zero carbon. So with that, that actually manifests itself in the building in a number of ways. And yes, you're right, transportation is a big part of that. So we will have extensive end of trip facilities, tapping into the city's very vibrant and bike network. So we consider that to be quite a benefit to this location and meeting some of those sustainability goals. As a matter of fact, it's also on a very heavily used bus route. So we're hoping that a lot of the occupants of this building and users of this building will choose to travel through bike or mass transit. So that's just one of the many ways that we're introducing a sustainable lens to this project.
Okay, I'm just going to ask a follow-up question. People in Victoria we love to ask, and we want to know where people are parking. Are there community parking spots available? Is there parking going to be available in the building?
Yes, that's part of the design. We will have underground parking. Again, it's going to be measured. The amount is measured in terms of meeting city policies, but also adjusting for, the fact that in the future we anticipate fewer trips by automobile. So yes, the answer is there will be public parking.
Okay, great. And somebody has written in and said, very exciting project. What kind of support do you need from the community to support your application to the City of Victoria for this project? And how and when do you need it?
There's 2 steps of approval in the city process. One is tomorrow at 9 a.m. There's a committee of the whole meeting that ultimately makes a recommendation to send us to a public hearing where a final determination is made. So, council does need to hear from people in the city. And so through our website, you can, there's a link to support the project. It's just a form you can fill out, or you can just email mayor-and-council@victoria.ca directly. And so those are the main methodologies to kind of voice your support for this project.
Okay. So here's another question. Again, height being a Victoria thing. Brian writes, thank you for your discussion and kudos on the project. I'm excited to see this project moving forward. My only question is why not build it taller so it can be more of a statement building? Good question.
We ask ourselves that every day. And, but yeah, the city has competing policy frameworks where, like Victoria 3.0 is looking for innovation and signature, signature projects to really open up Victoria to a larger investment, from the world. But then you have, kind of legacy policies that speak to heights in this area and paying respects to the Empress Hotel and surrounding buildings. So the theme of the design of this project from the very beginning, because we are the last, project in the area where there's a parking lot there currently. So we have a lot of overlapping interests, whether residential or heritage or whatnot. So the term we kind of looked to was it's a balancing of all interests. Mm-hmm. And we can't, because anything we do to satisfy one could create problems elsewhere. So that's why, we chose a building design that was as respectful as possible, still accomplishing broader community objectives.
Right. Okay. And somebody asked, how do you plan to meet your goals in becoming a public space, knowing it will result in a significant cut to the building's profitability? Do you want to take that? I mean, I think there is a lot of interest in the public space.
We've carefully balanced, our expectation on a financial return with actually making a meaningful contribution to the community. I mean, that's it in a nutshell. I don't know how else to explain it, but, we're not in this to build an office building, lease it up, and then exit, creating, taking a profit margin on it. That's not what we're about. We're about setting down roots, making a strong statement that, hey, we're part of the community. We're here to support and help and be inclusive with, helping this area and helping this community. So we've tempered our financial expectations. That's it.
Yeah.
And on that note, Kerry, as well, on the kind of the community investment side, the space for TELUS and the building has been designed as well to expand to a much larger workforce as well. So it's not just limiting to, because the TELUS workforce currently is spread across the CRD, and so this is a consolidation in the core, which is a benefit to the surrounding area. But then on top of that, there's expansion opportunities within it for TELUS to grow their Victoria team.
Okay, here's a question. This is interesting. Somebody writes, I love the ocean theme of the project. Can you speak to the role that the project could play in bringing awareness to some top ocean issues like acidification and plastic pollution? Good question.
This is a great question, absolutely. And one of the things that we're building into the building itself is the ability to treat for rainwater runoff, for example, that comes from beyond our property. Where you want to be very conscious about what are we putting back into the stormwater system that ultimately finds its way into our oceans. So we're working closely with Salmon Safe to make sure that some of the water resources that go through this building, harvesting of rainwater examples, treating the rainwater before it returns to the ocean, actually occurs with this development. So we want to actually improve what exists there in terms of our impact on the environment. In addition, we're really excited about this very large, ultra high definition screen in the lobby to actually broadcast live feeds. For example, working with Oceans Network Canada, some of the education pieces, the public interaction in that lobby, we can live stream, live feeds from the ocean floor. So we're starting those conversations with Oceans Network Canada, and really we have an obligation with this project to deliver to the community an education piece on our oceans. And our theming was deliberate, and that we think through these, some of these actions, we'll be able to fulfill that expectation that, it's TELUS Ocean, and we're talking about the oceans, and we're actually making an impact.
How fascinating.
On a far more utilitarian basis, the land itself is old fill that's contaminated that currently sits below the water table. So there's a constant, exchange already taking place. So this project is proposing to clean that all up and remove that continual pollutant that has existed for decades. So there's a lot that is being contemplated as part of this larger thematic expression of the building in terms of its sustainability performance.
That's interesting. Here's somebody with a very, very optimistic question. When are you planning to open the doors of TELUS Ocean? What is your timeline? Do you have a rough timeline? I know it's hard.
The answer is, how long is a string? No, I'm just kidding. It's a current contemplation is would probably be, I think, spring of 2024. Is that's probably the track we're on now. It's a building as sustainable as this is a very, very complex system to construct. So and those things take time.
Okay. Great. And does anybody, let me see if there's any more questions. Yeah, we've answered that one. I think we've come to the end of our questions. Does anybody have anything to add from our panel? Scott, Luke, or Emilie, any thoughts?
I'd just like to thank SIP for hosting this today, and really excited to share with everyone on the call today a little bit more about TELUS Ocean. We've been living it on the TELUS side for a couple of years now, but it's great that we can start explaining, what we'd like to accomplish with this and what we believe are really tremendous economic benefits to the community. And really would appreciate your support. Anything, and we're always open to feedback. So anything that you can do to support us on this would be appreciated. And please stay tuned for some exciting stuff. If we get through some of these milestone dates with council, it's full speed ahead, and we're getting really excited about that. So once again, thank you on behalf of TELUS for hosting this, and love talking to your membership about this.
That's great. And I want to say a big thank you to you, Scott. Scott Dutchak from TELUS, Luke Murray from ARYZE, and Emilie from South Island Prosperity Partnership. And thanks to our audience today for all of you being here. Some good questions. Again, you can find out more at, what is it, telusocean.com? I think. So thank you all. And I want to remind everybody to join us next Tuesday March 16th at 9 a.m., Christian Rangen, one of Europe's top innovation experts, will be joining us all the way from Norway to talk about how our region takes its seat at the table of the $1.5 trillion global blue economy. And we'll talk about creating a next generation ocean hub and cluster right here on South Island. So please join us for our next Ideas and Impacts. Thank you so much for being with us today.